Boker Tov, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Monday morning right here in Yerushalayim. It's an honor to be able to learn Chassidut with you together. And now we're continuing Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, based on the Perek Dal of the 4th chapter. And we are in middle of Mishna Dalid, Mishna number 4. We started discussing the subject of Ma'od Ma'od Havei Shefal Ruach. A person should be very, very humble. In the last year, we discussed at great length the subject of Moshe Rabbeinu and how Moshe teaches us how to be truly humble through recognizing the talents that Hashem has given him, at the same time, not to take credit for them. That is ultimate humility. I'd like to elaborate on this point today, first of all, by discussing the fact that Avraham Avinu was also humble, and also David HaMelech, King David, was also humble. By Avram said, Hinei naho altil daber al Hashem, I'm about to speak to Hashem, va'anochi afar va'efer, I am earth and ashes. What does that mean? Avraham Avinu, with all of his greatness, including the greatness that Hashem added on a letter to his name, the Hey, which meant Av Hamon Goyim, the father of all nations, he was able to come to the realization, V'anochi afar va'efer. By that, he was not saying that he is zero. He was saying that I feel myself to be as afar ve'efer. The afar, the earth, seems something which is very, very low. But on the other hand, the earth has within it tremendous treasures. And so we can either choose to look at the earth for what it seems as face value, or in our context, you can look at a person and look at him for face value and think that you know all about them. Today, everyone puts a badge, a label on other people. Or you can look deeply beneath and see the potential. And that's what Avraham meant when he said, I seem like afar. True that Hashem has given to be able to utilize the potentials that Hashem has given me. And so too, Efer. Efer is ashes, and Efer corresponds to the subject of the ashes of the red heifer, the paraduma, that its ashes need to be mixed in amongst other things with the water that is sprinkled onto the person that has become impure from coming in contact with a dead corpse. And so the Efer represents, it seems like it's nothing. It's like you just touch it and it becomes crumbed and withers away. But really, it has the power, the deepest levels of impurity, and lifting them up and bringing them into the world of purity. And the same thing with David HaMelech. David HaMelech, in a number of verses in the Tehillim, he talks about how simple he is and how unimportant he is. So David HaMelech, the source of his neshama comes from Malchut, according to the Kabbalah. Comes from the level of kingship, which is the exact same point that we're saying up until now. Humility, the classical example for humility, the Kabbalistic example, according to Chassidut, is Malchut. What does that mean? That Malchut, on one hand, is the lowest level. So you could say, Malchut, is that true kingship? Then we say, the source of Malchut is even higher than Chachma. So we have the 10 Sfirot, Chachma, Bina, Da'at, which are the 3 levels of intellect, and then the 7 levels of emotion, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. The source of Malchut is even higher than the Chachma. How could that be? Because we have many things in the world which, once again, seem to be on a relatively speaking unimportant level. But if you give the individual a chance, or if you give the situation a chance, then things will open up and things can develop and the beauty can come out. So humility is recognizing the potential which is inside the seemingly simple item or individual, and standing up to the challenge and saying, you know what, I'm going to do my best to reveal within myself my potential. Or I see an individual standing here next to me, I don't know the person. It's very possible the person has great potential. Or a great teacher that gives the child a chance and says, I'm going to give the child a chance to do their best. That's like David HaMelech. David HaMelech was not being kafui tova. He was recognizing what Hashem had given him. All he was saying was, it's not mine. It's Hashem's. Hashem gave me these special qualities, and what is mine is my obligation to reveal them. But once even when they're revealed, it's not mine to take pride in, because I didn't create them, I didn't acquire them. Hashem gave them to me. That is true humility. And so, the question is, if so, why isn't everyone in the world humble like Moshe and Avram and David HaMelech? Seemingly, we should all be humble. It should be a simple objective. Doesn't everybody understand the importance of balancing between who I am now, what I have achieved, and how much more I have to maximize on my potential? And so the answer is hidden in one of the discourses from the previous Rabbi. He says as follows, that it does not begin from logic. By nature, Hashem created us with having an ego. Naturally, we're not prepared to accept from other people that someone else is better than me. In order to be a receiver, especially in order to feel it deep down, you need to have humility. You need to constantly remind yourself about how much bittul we need. Moshe Rabbeinu, he went beyond logic, beyond intellect. In his nature, he was a special tzaddik. He did not search for ego. He, to begin with, was a special neshama. And so us, though we are regular human beings, we need to work on this. It's not something which comes so easy. Some people think that if it's rational, then it should be easy to keep. Some things are intellectually rational, but to bring it into practice, that's a whole other story. Moshe had a great level of selflessness and dedication to be given over to Hashem. So therefore, we have to look into ourselves and we have to say, you know what? Every Jew has a bit of Moshe. Everyone has a little bit, at least, of that quality that Moshe had. So it's not like we have to invent the wheel from scratch. We have it. We all have it. It's a question of being aware of it and tapping into our potentials. And here comes an interesting question. If you pay attention to the word, and I alluded to it in the beginning of the Mishna, Rabbi Meir says a similar expression of what we learned. Rabbi Meir, in a later Mishnah, he says as follows: "V'hevei shval ruach b'fnei kol adam." You should have a low spirit in front of every person, which is a similar expression to what we just earlier learned. Ma'od hevei shval ruach. You should be very, very humble. So the question is humility and shiflut haruach the same thing? And if not, what's the difference? There's no question that they're similar. To be humble, have a... And the answer is that shiflut is different than anava. So someone that learns Torah and does mitzvot, how could you say that that person should consider themselves on a lower level than other people? It's not his own greatness. It's the greatness of the Torah. It's the greatness of the mitzvot. So someone that has a great level of spirituality, in a sense, they're not allowed to view themselves as being less than someone else, because it's not their own greatness. It's the Torah's respect. It's the Torah's greatness. So therefore, Rabbi Meir says, and in our Mishna, we learn as follows. It's possible that someone should say that you should not feel less than someone else. You should just act in a way of being shafel, of being lower than other people. Therefore, Rabbi Meir says, veheve, you should actually be it. That a person should truly consider themselves lower than every person. It says in chapter 30 in the Tanya that when a person contemplates to themselves how the other person that seems to be less than him is acting not in a proper way, veheve be'emet lamito, you should not judge your friend until you come to their place, because definitely the reason why the person sinned is because he finds himself in a certain atmosphere which does not allow him to control himself. Obviously, that's not an excuse for the person that has a test. But for someone that is looking down upon another person, the Alter Rebbe says, do not look down at them. Because you never know that if you were in that situation, if you would be equally or perhaps worse than that person. So we should not judge. In other words, just like when we look at another person, we are separating between the individual and their actions. So too, the person that learns Torah and does mitzvot, and you look at someone else that's on a lower level, you yourself, you can divide within yourself between the person and the Torah that you learn. The Torah that you learn obviously deserves the most respect. But when you as a human being, you're looking at another human being, it is extremely important. It is extremely important that a person should view themselves always as being lower than other people, to the extent that our Mishna says, Ma'od ma'od lavei shval ruach. I want to share with you two short stories to finish off today's shir, which are connected to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is the one who said these statements in our later Mishnah. And Rabbi Meir himself is focusing on the subject of humility because he himself in his own life, he had two scenarios which we can learn from. Number one, Rabbi Meir used to say a speech every Shabbos, and one woman was used to hearing his speech. And one time he said a longer speech, and when she came home, her husband was really mad. He said to her, "Do not walk inside the home until you spit in front of the rabbi who spoke." When Rabbi Meir heard of this, he told her to, I think it means he told her to spit not directly at her, but in another direction, which that was the Yetzer Hara, the Ayin Hara, and 7 times. And he told her, go home and tell your husband that you did it not only once, but 7 times. So Rabbi Meir, he took upon himself to in a sense, this embarrassment. One time, she told him that one of his students gave her kiddushin, which gave her the ring for marriage. She doesn't remember which one it was. And so right now, she's married to someone, and she cannot marry anyone else. So she asked her mayor to find out which student that was. So the mayor did not want to embarrass the student. And so he gave her a get as if she was married to him, and everyone else gave her a get. And this way, she was able to go without embarrassing anybody. And he embarrassed himself in order not to embarrass other people. So he is the right person to teach us about mu'od mu'od havei shval ruach b'fnei kol adam. We should be very humble in front of every person. Thank you very much for joining us. Tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem will continue. And tomorrow evening, we're continuing the Maimer in person at 7:30, Tuesday evening at 7:30, the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisroel, loving of your fellow Jew. Thank you for joining us.